So Trisha, what a pleasure it is to talk with you. You've been one of those real leaders in the field, and Cadre has benefited so many times from your expertise and good thinking.
Well, thank
and
you.
it's a real pleasure to be chatting with you. I wonder, maybe to kind of get things started, could you just sort of tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and your interests?
Well, I've been doing this for about 20 years and started doing IEP facilitations kind of before it was the in thing. 98, 99 school year, 2000, just when it was in its inception. Do mostly IEP facilitations, although do special education mediation as well, but many, many more IEP facilitations. So.
And if you sort of think about then IEP facilitation, are there lessons that you've learned over the years, sort of the enduring truths about the work? And
well, I think when I got that question, I sort of thought about that, and a couple things came to mind. Preparation, I think, is critical if you really want to have a collaborative and productive meeting. I think improving that communication, which is usually the stumbling block, but improving that communication and demonstrating how to improve it by being willing to share proposals, share concerns, share drafts, share reports, but actually exchanging some information ahead of time so that everyone comes to the table with a level playing field and knows what's going to be asked, proposed, knows what the thoughts are of the team on maybe some drafts of the IEP that they share with the parent, results of evaluations. I think is a skill or technique, whatever you'd like to call it, that is something that a team can duplicate in any case after that, not just with that family. The other thing that came to mind was sort of the ability to have similar expectations, whether you're going to a mediation or an IEP facilitation, but understanding the role of that neutral person, whether it be the mediator or the IEP facilitator, realizing they're not the decision maker, but they're going to assist with communication, collaboration, and then understanding that process and really knowing what they're walking into and what that process is going to look like if they've never been to it before. Many times at mediation or an IEP facilitation, it's the first time those parties may be walking into that. So I think having similar expectations is a critical lesson that over the years I've learned and try to practice.
So is there a role that the facilitator plays in that pre-meeting sort of preparation?
Yes, yeah, and that's something that philosophically with me in my sort of style of facilitating is there's a very large component of a preparation for working with both the school district, charter school, whatever it might be, and the family, and sort of gaining what are their concerns, what proposals are they going to come forth with, and then trading those and making sure that those are going to be productive at the meeting, that everybody knows what the agenda is. There isn't a gotcha moment.
So no ambushes.
Right. Trying not to make that happen, but yeah, and so that's something that I do on what I call some intake phone calls, is having a separate intake phone call with the family, and if they have an advocate or an attorney, and then a separate phone call with the district. Usually it's the special ed director, and if there's a particular other key member that they want to be on that phone call, and sort of gathering and talking about that sharing of information and being ready to sort of know what that agenda is going to consist of, and that it might be a little bit more than just those IEP components, or some of those IEP components might be a little more in depth than what you're thinking they're going to be.
And do you advise families on how they might, how they can most capably sort of present their perspectives?
Yes, typically, I think families and districts both, there's not a real true negotiator there. I mean, I come from a mediation background, so some of that training, and so I think the fact of coming and not just expressing your gripes, your complaints, your problems, but to then convert that into, and what's your solution option, so that you can present it in a positive way that could possibly be supported because of the way you're presenting it, and not just coming to the table and sort of doing a lot of complaining and what's wrong, but maybe bringing that issue to the table and then saying, and my solution option is, my proposal would be, in order to, overcome that. So I do a lot of sort of on those intake phone calls, couching that, and districts as well, not really being true negotiators at times, and so creating that proposal format with concerns.
So thinking about your work and your training as a mediator and facilitator, are there ideas or concepts that sort of undergird your practice?
Yeah, and a couple things that I thought of when I kind of read that question was, I think what people relate fairly well to is telling them that I'm going to come in and be an advocate for the process, but not an advocate for either team member, nor any concept or proposal that they're coming with, but an advocate for the process, and to really have people's voices heard, have discussions, investigate, evaluate different options, and coming up with some solutions that are more consensus driven. So that's one thing that I think people relate to a lot, is that wording. And then the other thought was that I really see myself as more of a guardian of collaboration, team collaboration, and not wanting to intervene too much as long as the team is collaborating. Assisting them where they may falter and move out of that collaborative zone, and then ask some questions and get them back on track with collaborating. I really, truly believe that if you honor the team's expertise and recognize what they come to the table with a little assistance, they'll get there and they'll do a pretty good job. And I say expertise, meaning parents and knowing their child, and then professionals and knowing their field that they're coming from. So I think those are a couple of key areas that I really try to focus on.
So you've worked with, I would expect, say even with complete certainty, that you've worked with advocates and people who are really, who are quite upset and who are who may not necessarily always bring, the most positive and constructive energy to meetings. Do you have sort of techniques or ways that you understand that each one is different?
Yeah, and I kind of thought about that, and initially was sort of, what are we thinking of here? What comes to mind? And once I started jotting down ideas, I had a number of areas. So first one was, I think, scheduling enough time. I think there's an element of insincerity or disrespect when you try to, say this meeting's only going to be an hour long or an hour and a half long, and you've set the clock and that's ticking and you must hurry.
Yeah.
So scheduling enough time. I always tell people, between elementary, middle, and high school, there's a number of components in those IEPs, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger as the kiddo gets bigger. You get that transition piece and all sorts of other things, and depending on the youngster's needs. And so, an elementary IEP might have 30 to 40 components. When they get to secondary, it could be 70 to 80. And so thinking that you're going to cover that in 1 hour or even a half hour, if there's been some contentiousness already, is not of a collaborative nature thinking. So I think scheduling enough time. I also think demonstrating for the team how to stay on track with their agenda, and typically their agenda is walking through those IEP components in the order that they're in. They all build up to creating that program for that youngster. And what to do with persons that seem to get off track a lot, and to demonstrate for them how to validate that there's an important issue here. And I'll usually ask the team, is this a good time to talk about that, or will we come up to that point and it would be helpful to hear that during that other point? And let the team decide, oh yeah, we'll cover that in the next 3 components, or we cover that about 6 components away. And I'll ask if somebody can take a note so that we don't forget to go back there and at least validate the importance of that concern and know that we're going to come back to that then when it would make more sense to have that discussion. And so I think teams are typically apprehensive to sort of, they think, cut somebody off and get them more upset. And I think there's a very nice way of doing that by just, asking if this is the right place to talk about this, or will we come up to that, and it'll be more productive to have that conversation there. I have had teams thank me about that because they've had parents over and over who they've not known what to do with that mode of operating. And so demonstrating that for them, they see that and they see how to do it in a very, very respectful manner and still bring it up later. So that's something that over the years and with the contentiousness of folks that could be there helps keep people on track. I think having folks focus on the future. History, some issues probably got me there as a facilitator, but it's nothing we can change. It's nothing we can do something about. We're there to work on a future educational program for the child. The more we spend on the past, the more we're not spending on what the future program should look like. And so how to sort of keep directing information for the future. And I talk about that during my intakes with both phone calls I make, one with the family and one with the district, that, letting them maybe do a little bit of venting on those intake phone calls, but then when we get to the table, we're really going to focus on the future and what that program needs to look like. And what didn't work in the past, then you need to have good proposals ready to make changes for the future. And so trying to kind of keep everybody headed forward on that future focus. And then just any opportunities for collaboration, teaching them how to convert their problems or complaints, as I mentioned already, into a proposal format, coming up with a solution to offer. Then I usually try to, if a team doesn't accept a certain proposal for whatever reason, after there's been some discussion and there's been a, no, we're not going to accept that, usually try to get folks thinking about, is there anything from that concept that we could pull together from the conversation we just had and we got to know that's not going to work? Is there anything that we can use out of that and tease a counter proposal or a different proposal? I think we would all agree that when we offer something that we think is very important and near to our heart and we get a no, I'm not willing to sort of continue to play this game then. And I think parents get that feeling when they get that, no, we're not going to, you're not going to be able to get that service or additional service. And so I usually will try to get the team saying, well, seems to be an important concept for whomever it is that had that proposal. Is there anything we can do to sort of still, from the conversation we just had, come up with something else in that same ballpark that might get something that mom, dad, advocate, principal, feels like.
Just listening to you, I'm trying to figure out what I might be able to come up with.
I think we can, and so coming up with, a little bit more investigation and evaluation and coming up with maybe, like I said, a counter proposal or another proposal. And then last, as far as I try to implement what I call a consensus as you go concept, and anything that is going to be written down, documented, whether it's in the IEP component or in the prior written notice, or if there's a parent concern section, whatever allows bits of information to be documented, that information is documented, but then either read aloud or showed on the projection device, which so many of the IEPs are computerized, so that everybody agrees on the language, what just got worded. That was the proposal, yes, that was the discussion, and yes, that was our decision to accept or reject that. So that by the end of the meeting, you've sort of had all that consensus as you go along the way. And you're not trying to reinvent discussions that happened hours ago. So those are sort of some things that, as I'm working with folks, trying to get people not to be turned off by not maybe getting what they asked for.
Yeah, on that subject, I'm just thinking about sort of your skill and experience. I mean, we've all had the opportunity to be in IEP meetings with unruly participants, and as you kind of as you think about those situations, and whether it's an educator, an advocate, a parent, there's someone who's breaking the deal as fast as you can make it. Do you have any? How do you approach those situations?
Well, a couple different things. From the get-go, sort of during my intake meetings, I usually try to remind everyone that we're all there for the same goal. We're going to create a future educational program for this student. Might come from different perspectives. Let's honor that. Let's be respectful of everyone's thoughts and their backgrounds. But let's all agree we're here for the same goal. We're going to get there by the end of the day, hopefully, as long as we can, work together as a team. So that's one thing I do is that common goal. Parents typically, I'll hear a lot about in my intake that, the district doesn't really hear me, or they don't document everything the same way that I say it or that I ask it in. There's always that apprehension. So I usually assure parties that we're going to address all your concerns. We're going to document where we need to document the response you get. I'm not saying you're going to get everything you want exactly as you want it, but I'm going to make sure it gets documented for you in whatever the right place is to get documented. We'll ask the team for assistance, but that usually sort of assists with them realizing that they're going to be listened to. Usually do a lot of asking questions to let them know, demonstrate for them I'm trying to get an understanding of what the concern is, and asking some questions of them. Again, I go back to their issues of concern, their problems, and not just presenting it that way, but demonstrating for them or helping them couch it into a proposal format so they actually come up with a solution. So wanting to drive that home for them in the prep, so that in the intake that I do, so that at the table they sort of catch on to that concept, and I'll assist them if they need it. But knowing that would probably be more readily accepted and you'll get some feedback rather than just complaining, and putting that on the table for folks. A couple other things, trying to reframe those negatives, that negative language, into more neutral language and not repeating that negativity, so that that's what continues to be heard. And along those same lines, when I hear that we and them kind of mentality, us against them, is to use some language that is the concept of it's a shared problem, it's a shared responsibility to come up with a solution. It's a team working here together. So it's not an odd man out, it's not a we against them, it's not us against them, it's all shared. It's a team concept. So those are some things over the years that I have used that kind of run through my mind when I'm working with those kind of folks.
I hate to squander an opportunity to talk with you without sort of just giving you a chance. If there's any sort of last thoughts you would share, you have such a wealth of information, and we've loved working with you. Anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you...
No, I tried to power pack my answers, and you had good questions, and so I think I've shared quite a bit. I think year after year you learn a little bit more. You work with different groups of people and you kind of file something else away that was a trick to use or was a way to get that group to collaborate.
Well, as I think about how well prepared you were for this interview, it's no accident that really, really thorough preparation is such an important part of your practice. And so,
yeah, I really, and there are different philosophies on that. Some people like to prepare, some people don't. Some people like to go in with a clean slate. And so my philosophy over the years, I've learned the more I can do some prep work and sort of set that stage. I can guess on how much time we might take, for one thing, and then I sort of want everybody to come with a level playing field, that they know what's going to come forth, what kind of proposals are going to come forth. They've seen drafts. Everybody comes in, like I said, equal partners in the team. So.
Well, thank you so much, Trisha. I really Your work is outstanding, and you're so generous in terms of sharing your wisdom. So thank you very much. It's been
You're
a pleasure
quite welcome.
talking with you.
Thank you.